What's up, guys? It's Eric and John from Rare Candy, and today we're back with our St. Louis slash Collinsville regional recap for you guys. So yeah, we recently went to regionals. At the time of filming, it was 1 weekend ago, so pretty recently. This was actually an expanded tournament, which I believe it's both of our second expanded
hmm
regionals of the season. So
That's right.
yes, we have a little bit of experience in expanded this season, but so I guess in a way it's nice to switch gears and play expanded instead of standard. But
It's good and bad. I definitely it's hard to switch from everything local, everything small is standard. So it's always a different thing. Like you have to change your mindset, and especially with Sun and Moon coming out, it's not a huge impactful set, but it had a lot of stuff that proved to be pretty viable in expanded. So we'll talk
yeah,
about that some more.
yeah. I mean, we can jump straight into that. Just talking about leading up to this regional, what has kind of changed in the expanded format since the last one that we went to. And off the top of my head, I think the big few things that have happened is the Giratina promo, which has only been legal in standard. I don't think it's been legal for any expanded regionals as of yet. And then also, obviously, the new Sun and Moon set, which, there's a ton of pretty viable cards that you could consider playing in expanded. So we had to kind of take these things into consideration. I guess my first knee jerk reaction is that Greninja is kind of dead and
Yeah,
expanded.
and Trevenant a lot gets hurt by the promo.
Yeah, so that's the first things that get affected, especially Greninja, because in standard, the Giratina promo actually made Greninja better because they started playing Lab, which hurts a lot of the uh, good decks in standard. But in expanded, Greninja has to play Rough Seas, otherwise they just kind of lose to Trevenant. So the Giratina promo kind of puts Greninja players in an awkward position. So Greninja saw pretty much no play. I didn't see literally any at the tournament. I'm sure someone was playing it, but I didn't see any while I was there, though. I don't know about you, John.
Greninja, I know, I thought Grafton was, but he's actually switched it up too. Grafton Roll, if you don't know, he played Greninja pretty much for every tournament this year, but he switched it up too and played an Archeops, or not Archeops,
Aerodactyl.
Aerodactyl deck. Yeah, nobody I know of was playing Greninja, and I think it was most people were just scared to play it rather than it was a terrible, terrible call. It wasn't a great call, but at the same time, it could
Yeah.
have still been a viable play. But it did not have a showing at all in
It,
St. Louis.
it's actually kind of weird, too, because I think Greninja, looking at some of the decks that did well, I think would have had a decent chance against other than the new Sun and Moon decks. Like
Mm-hmm.
Mega Gardevoir was pretty popular. Greninja would have been good against that. If Greninja showed up and just played Rough Seas, I think it has a decent Trevenant matchup. Um, I don't know. It just seemed like still a decent deck, but people are just too scared, I think, because
Well,
of the Giratina promo.
yeah, and also what did do well was surprising to me. There was a lot of Vileplume decks,
Oh yeah,
but not focused on the Toolbox variant that I'd seen before. It was a lot more Lurantis Vileplume and some Decidueye Vileplume that did well. And those were the two most surprising decks to me, looking at the top 32, and even the top 8 had some of those, if I remember correctly.
I was gonna.
Um, and,
Oh, go ahead, John.
and I guess I'll get into it. There was a lot of the metagame was a lot different than I was expecting, to be honest with you, and I think that probably hurt. I chose to go with Toad Bats because I thought the main two decks that would be played would be Speed Darkrai and Yveltal on Maxis, and it has really good matchups for those two decks. Yveltal Maxis you beat pretty well. If you get like a turn one Ghetsis, they really have no way to set up Archeops, and so you can really just kind of take them apart from there. And then Speed Darkrai is a little trickier if they get a hot turn one, but it still is favorable, I think, if you're able to get everything going.
Yeah,
Um, and neither those decks still showed up, but the field was wide open in
and
my mind.
expanded normally is too, but I would agree. I thought the meta was going to be completely different. Like, to be honest, looking at cards like Lurantis and Decidueye, which have been good in standard, or if have had you know decent popularity in standard, those are cards I look at in expanded and see, well, Archeops just beat you, so these cards are bad in expanded. Like
Yeah,
that was my reaction. So I didn't
right.
even consider them for expanded.
A lot of people went with that route, but I think people that played them were like, "Oh well, I'll just run Vileplume, and my opponent will never be able to get Archeops out."
Yeah,
Or,
which
I'll get all my stuff out turn one, and then they can't really do anything about, okay. So
that
it ended up working out for those people.
yeah,
So
definitely. It's just a little bit scary, I guess. Like I don't know, I'd be a little scared to do that and be like, well,
yeah,
turn one,
it,
I need everything or I lose type of thing. Like I
but
get scared off by that those types of
the deck
ideas.
that won it was freaking Mega Ray, so I guess that kind of goes with that same principle too.
Yeah, that's true.
So we just go there, go off turn one, boys, and just go to town. But
But
the the most the very I think the very most surprising thing was the counter to the counter, if you will. Like people played all these grass decks, and I know a lot of people the day of or like right around the time of the tournament switched and played Volcanion, which I don't know if you ever thought about playing Volcanion expanded, but it wasn't even on my radar. Like people brought it up in discussions leading up to the tournament, and either everybody was like trying to make it a sleeper, saying, "Oh, it's bad," or people genuinely didn't consider the thought of it. Like, I mean, I thought about it, but at the same time, like, I don't know. The argument I heard leading up to it was there's decks like Night March and like Mega Ray that just do it better. Like, just hit those numbers a lot easier,
yeah,
less things going their way. But Volcania makes a lot of sense if you break it down. Item lock's big, but you can kind of play around that with Starmie. A lot of players did from evolutions, and Garbodor is not a threat in expanded. You have Tool Scrapper, Megaphone, Zerosic, all in expanded that you don't have access to in standard, and because of that, a lot of players choose not to play Garbodor, um, and so that opens it up a little bit for Volcanion, and so I think a lot of players realize, well, this is one of the most consistent decks in standard. It still hits a lot of like you get some access to Blacksmith, you get access to
compressor.
Battle Compressor, of course, Super Energy Retrieval.
Oh
You get
yeah,
that,
that's the big one, I think.
yeah, and so it does have some tools, and it showed up. Like
Yeah, I
I
I
know, like three or four of them made day two,
hmm
so that was really surprising.
yeah, I actually wasn't thinking about Volcanion at all, but really when you think, well, this is going to be a format where no one's going to play Greninja, and there's going to
Mhm.
be all of this grass to beat like Seismitoad variants, like that kind of, you know, creates like a perfect storm for Volcanion to actually do something.
Yeah.
Um,
And it helps when a lot of good players play it too. Like you can say, "Oh, it's great," and then like if no one plays it, like I don't know, you will still have a lot of people that just it doesn't work for them. It takes a player that can play out of those bad situations where you are item locked or where you are like I don't know have a Volcanion stuck active. And
mhm.
there was some really good players playing it. We had Raul already make top four, and I think Brad Curcia. We had Azul Garcia. Great, I can't say his last name. You had I think Ryan Sablehouse went with it, maybe not. But you had a lot of good players, a lot
Mhm.
of Texas players that know played it. Um, so it was surprising, but like once people get it going, it changes some things. And I was like, I never played one against with Toad, but I feel like there are some bad matchups in expanded. But I guess
Yeah.
people make risky decisions. Like that's the thing. Any deck you think about in expanded is going to have bad matchups. So
Yeah, there's just
that's
so many viable decks. There is no really what's the best deck. I mean, I think Yveltal probably has like the most well-rounded batch of matchups, but even
right.
still, there's things that like if it goes against, there's like weird things that can beat Yveltal sometimes, and that's just how expanded is. There is no, I think, one unbeatable deck. It's just a giant storm of broken decks that
Yeah,
all that all do
it's
different
it's
things.
a, it's a mess.
But I guess so. We kind of talked about what has shown up. Let's get more into, I guess, why what decks we chose and why we decided to play them. And John, you already kind of mentioned Toad Bat, so I'll let you keep talking about
Yeah.
that a little bit. Why
Okay.
did you decide on Toad Bats, and are there any things in your list that are of particular noteworthiness?
Yeah, sure. I'll go into it. I chose Toad Bats. It's kind of my fallback deck and expanded. I got a top eight with it last year for Georgia regionals. I guess 2 years ago now. That was 2017. It's 2015. I got that top eight, and I always feel like whenever I play that deck, I have the best chance for a win, no matter what opponent. It's kind of like some people feel like with Evil Tall. I feel like that way with Toad Bats. Like I'm never out of the game. So I thought about some other decks leading up to it. I tested Solgaleo a little bit. I tested out like Gardevoir, and neither one of those was. I just struggled against. I tested mainly against Evoltol and Speed Darkrai, and that probably hurt me in the long run. Those decks did not show up, but I didn't play a single one of those at all in my whole tournament. So those are challenging. Like those are the things that I guess are my regrets are. I don't know. Like that's the thing when you get to expanded is okay. I can test for what I think will be there, but if it turns out that you don't play against those decks all day, then so be it. Um, but I went with a Toad Bats list. In the past in Georgia, I played a Super Scoop Up, and I ran Puzzles and Scoop Up Cyclone. Kind of a more less consistent, but more of a stay alive deck. And I felt like in this format, I wanted to focus more on getting that turn one quicking punch, like you said. Otherwise, if you're not doing that, you're kind of losing the game. If you don't get that turn one, and like being able to get this T1 Silent Lab kind of thing, um, but still have outs to disrupt and still have outs to like put damage when I need to. So I ran four lasers and a Verbank in it. Um, and I ran like an enhanced hammer and a Zerosic and a team flare grunt to kind of be able to put my opponent on the back foot when I needed to. So it was just typical Toad Bats, but that's kind of what I wanted to do. Just be able to play that deck better than anybody else, and I felt like I played okay. If I want to go into the, do you want to talk about your deck first? Do you want me to go straight into what I played against?
Yeah, we can do matchups a little bit later. Well, I guess we
Okay.
can just cover our decks for right now.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it sounds like you just kind of went for like, you said it's kind of like a generic list or whatever, but to me that sounds like you just went with a consistent list, no weird
Right.
decks or anything like that. And
Yeah, like I ran Forge Sycamore, four or two N, a Chorus, a Gutsus, and like two Lysander. So yeah, like as opposed to lists in the past I've ran where I ran three Sycamore, and one Lysander. I wanted to have those outs against Trevenant and against the Mirror, and against like any deck where I'm able to draw through my deck without having to like just sit there and pass, like that kind of thing. And there were still games, like to be honest, there were still games where I was still sitting there, getting end of three and passing, and that sucks. But I don't know. I don't think it would have changed at all if I ran.
that's
It's
good
tough
though.
to say. Yeah, but it was still consistent, and it wasn't maddeningly inconsistent, which is I can't play that if it's expanded. Like you just can't.
Yeah, Expand's too unforgiving to play like a really um, janky list, I think, and I think it's
Yeah.
tempting and Expanded too to over tech out your deck because there's so many different decks you need to be prepared to play against. It's kind of easy to like start cutting all your consistency because you're like, oh, well, I have a bad Lurantis matchup or whatever it is. I need to tech for this and I need to tech for that, and I've been guilty of that too. But I think you made the right decision. Just going for consistency, even though it may not have been the play. It sounded like for a Toad Bats list, you had a good list at the least.
Yeah, I think so.
But myself, I actually played Mega Gardevoir with Dimension Valleys and Max Potions, and so I actually played this at Philadelphia earlier this year, and I'll put a link to the list that I used at that tournament if you guys want to check that out. And so honestly, just to be upfront, I hate expanded. I think it's a trash format. And most of the big stuff has been standard this year, and even locally we play standard, so it's
Hmm.
I'm not the most prepared to play expanded, and I had very little time to actually test. I literally only had maybe a night to play a handful of games, so I needed something that I was generally comfortable with and that had decent dark matchups. That was kind of like my criteria for the deck I wanted to pick. So Mega Gardevoir actually has pretty good dark matchup. It's resistant to dark, only takes one energy to attack, so Yveltal is just kind of a bad attacker against it. And I played it before, so I'm generally comfortable with the deck. And I'll have the list on screen too, but there are some changes I made from my previous list I played in Philadelphia. Like I was just saying, it's easy to kind of start getting a little too carried away with all of your techs, and I think that's something that I was guilty of in Philadelphia. So I've cut out some of the techs I previously used at that tournament and made the list a little bit more consistent. But yeah, I picked the deck. I was comfortable with it. It's really fun to play. If you guys have never tried it out, I definitely encourage you to. It has solid dark matchups, solid Trevenant matchups, and those are two of the best decks in Expanded. Great Night March matchup, Vespiquen matchup, etc. So I just like the deck, and just really interestingly too, um, you know, it's a deck that again I played back in Philadelphia regionals, but no one else was really playing it. No one was talking about it, and I didn't think anything of it choosing to play it again. But literally maybe a couple days before St. Louis regional, everyone started talking about it, and it was actually a deck that showed
Hmm.
up, and I was not expecting that at all. Um, but I'm gonna claim first on playing it.
You can say whatever you want. I don't think
I'm
anybody's
gonna
gonna
I'm gonna
argue
claim that at the least.
with
But
it.
I guess as far as like interesting techs or anything like that in my list, um, I didn't really play anything too crazy. I did play Rattata in my list to get rid of tool cards. Um, it's a kind of a standard inclusion in standard format, but I opted to put it in the expanded deck. Um, Karen's in there to deal with Night March and Vespiquen. And two hex. That's another thing. I used to play one ranger and one hex, but I switched over to two hex, just because first turn hex is really good, and there's a lot of item lock and expanded. So I felt like playing two hex would be pretty good, given expanded's pretty cancerous in that regard. So, but yeah, guys, that's the deck I chose. I like the deck. And looking back at my day, I lost all of the matchups that my deck is supposed to lose to, and I won all of the matchups that I feel like I'm supposed to win. So like I don't feel bad
Yeah.
about the deck choice. Just
What did
expanded.
you lose to? Well, I
Uh,
guess we'll get into that.
yeah. We can start talking about that going into our matchups.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just continue. So for the day, I went 4-5 or 4-4 drop. Um, Not the best record at all for expand. Definitely not one of my best performances. But first round I played against Trevenant, which I'm actually fine with because they play Dimension Valley, so they never counter your stadium. Um, they just kind of whittle away at your Gardevoirs, and Gardevoir actually hits for really good numbers against Trevenant because
Mhm.
even without discarding anything from your bench, you hit 110. That knocks out regular Trevenants. If you discard your whole bench, it does 160. So the math works out well. I play two hex, so I just have a lot of outs against that. So I won that. Second round, same thing. Another Trevenant deck beat it.
Mm.
I donked them first game. Second game, they actually donked me. I started lone egg, and they got item lock, so I couldn't really do anything. And then our third game, I just won that one. Uh, so for my third round, I played against Volcanion, which, like me and John were saying, weren't really expecting to see at this tournament, and I definitely lost to that. um, yeah, not a fun matchup. Just because Volcanion and Expanded, they have so many different tools. It's very easy for them to one-shot your Mega Gardevoirs, so you never have a chance to do Max Potion to heal off all of your damage and all that type of stuff.
Mhm.
So they're one-shotting my Megas. I have to two-shot their Volcanion, so it's just not a good prize trade, and I ended up losing that series. Fourth round, I actually played against Donphan, which I was definitely not expecting to see.
Mhm.
But props to someone for actually coming through and being brave enough to play that at this regional. I did win that. It's a really easy matchup. They just don't do enough damage to you. You can max potion off everything. And it's just easy to knock out Donphan, so won that matchup. Next round, I played against an Archie's Blastoise deck, and that's another deck that's kind of obscure and I didn't expect to see, and I was actually pretty worried playing against it because it's another one of these decks that can one-shot your Mega Gardevoirs while you have to rely on two-shotting them. The only real out you have against them is just streaming Hex Maniacs to where they can't get their energy down onto their Keldeos to knock you out. That's really about all you can do in this matchup. So luckily, I actually did win this series. I won, yeah, I think we had a full 3-game series. I won game 1, he won game 2, I won game 3. It was super close and definitely not a matchup I don't think my deck is expected to win, but I managed to pull it out. So I felt pretty good about that. After that, I played another Blastoise deck, which I was super bummed about because I was just thinking there's no way I'm going to get lucky enough to win another unfavorable matchup. And I actually lost. And this was actually, I think, Brandon Flowers from, I think he's with Charizard Lounge. I think that's who he's with. So I apologize if I
Team
forget.
Mad Bulls, I know that.
Yeah, but he's a
But
good player. I want to give a shout out to him. We had a fun game. I did lose the series, though, unfortunately, as I kind of expected. I had a couple of really weird games. Like one game, I Colressed for 9 and didn't hit an energy. Like there was like 3 or 4 turns where I just didn't have energy to even attack. So definitely not the best. So I lost that. So feeling a little bit bummed out because now I'm like 4-3 at this point. Or no, I'm 4-2. So I can actually still make day 2. I just have to win out. But next round I get paired up against Drew Kennett, and he's actually playing Volcanion. So I'm like, oh great. So I'm not making day 2 now. And yeah, I was not excited to see another Volcanion deck, and it kind of played out just as I expected. He one-shotted my Mega Gardevoirs. I tried two-shotting him. It just didn't really work out. I didn't really have many turns where I could afford a turn of just playing Hex Maniac to turn off his steam ups, just because Volcanion just puts on so much pressure. So I lost that series, and that knocked me out of making day 2. So, but I can still win out for the day and get top 64 potentially. Maybe get some packs and still get the $250. So I still decided to play it out. But next round, I got paired against a Dark Tauros deck. So he played like Yveltal EX, Darkrai EX, Tauros GX, and it's actually a matchup that normally I felt pretty good about. But
right.
the problem was, I think he was a bit of a newer player, so he was a little bit of a slower player. I myself am a slower player, so our series never completed. Basically, our first game, we both started completely dead, and it took a good bit of time for both of us to actually draw out of it. He ended up drawing out of his dead opening first, and ended up, I think, like benching me out or something. Something like that. I forget what happened. But he ended up finally getting back into the game before I could, and he won game 1. Game 2 played out a little bit more how the series is expected to go. I got down, I think it was 1 prize to 6 at the very end, and but time got called. Our first game just took too long, and our second game took a while too. So unfortunately, the series didn't complete, and he ended up winning that round. So after that, I just dropped since there was no chance of even getting any packs or anything. So for the day, I went technically 4-4 drop. So I said not my best regionals, but I don't know. It was still cool getting to see everybody. So I don't regret going or anything. But that was my scrubby tournament report. So how'd your day go, John?
Not much better, unfortunately. So I went into the tournament pretty confident, and I don't know. I thought like as long as I don't hit a bunch of grass decks or Trevenant, I should be okay. I beat most of that other stuff. So round one, I play against a newer player. He's playing Mega Caesar, which sounds like it's a bad matchup because they're able to get rid of your DC with that Mega attack and all that. In game one, I was losing pretty. Like I didn't really get set up very fast, and so he's able to set up a board with like 2 Mega Scizors and energy. But he was making a lot of mistakes throughout the game. I guessed on one of the turns, and I shuffled he shuffled his 2 cards in his deck, and then he drew 2 cards, misreading the card instead of saying, okay, I draw the cards. Here it is. He draws the cards, so I had to call a judge over and sort that out. And then later on in the game, he attached a metal energy, like the special metal energy from, I guess the last time it was printed was Hard Gold Soul Silver or something like that era.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, gotta call a judge over again because that's shield energy is legal, and it does roughly the same thing, but not exactly the same thing, and it's a different name. And so you can't play that card, even though it's similar. It's considered it's not within the standard format. It's before that. So he got a game loss because of that. And I went on after that and beat him pretty bad in game 2. So I 2'd him, and I was looking at like following him on my phone. You check your pairings in between rounds to see where you're at the next round. I don't think you won a single game after I beat him.
That sucks.
Yeah, that always is a bad feeling. Like your first round opponent affects your resistance a lot. If you get paired up against somebody that's pretty good, it can mean a lot later on in the day when you're trying to get in. So after that, I played against somebody. What was it? I think it was a newer player still. Jeez, what deck was it? I know I won round 2, but I can't remember who I played against, to be honest with you. And then round 3, I played against Vileplume, Lurantis. And I was like, okay, this is such a bad matchup. There's no way. Like Lurantis, he ran Muscle Band, yeah, to even get two hit, like to increase my damage output. So even if like there was just no way to beat that. Like I tried using Lugia, and I almost got there game 1, but I made a mistake early game. I had a Jirachi in my. I played down a Jirachi opening hand, and I think I Getsist just to kind of try to disrupt them, trying to prevent them from getting Vileplume out turn 1. So I had some more time to get items, and it worked. I bought myself a couple turns doing that, but the next turn I had a Juniper, and I played that, and I had a couple of scoop ups that I could have used to pick up the Jirachi, and I didn't do that, and that ended up biting me in the butt because he won the game by centering up Jirachi on the bench. So that was a mental error. But truth be told, I think I won game 2 by donking him, and then game 3 he beats me real bad. Like he gets set up with a Vileplume out turn 1, and at that point there's not a lot I can do. So it could have gone a little differently if I'd done what I said I should have done, but so be it. So I go into lunch 2-1, and I'm like, okay, not too bad. Come out of lunch and play against Night March, and I'm like, okay, great, good. I get to play against Night March. It's a good matchup, and it is a good matchup. But I did not draw very well. I didn't draw DC until like 5 or 6 turns into the game. By that point, he has like 8 or 9 Night Marchers in his discard pile. Is able to one-shot whatever toad I put up, and it's not good. Even then, there was a turn where I whiffed DC a couple times, and he got if I'm able to get Crobats even, I can stop his Muse. I can kill his Muse or kill his Joltix, even if I miss quaking punches. Um, it should just be an auto win, but he said, I think during the game, he's like, oh man, I played against Toadbats a bunch of times last night with my friends, and we put in all these different cards to help out, and we eventually just came up to the conclusion that it's not a matchup I can win. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes me feel even worse about losing to you. But, I mean, game one was bad, and the game two was even worse. I still wasn't drawing into DC. I don't think I quaking punched the entire game. And I looked at my prizes when I was done with the game. I had 2 DCs pressed. So that was that. And then after that, I haven't gone 2-2 in a tournament in a long time. So that was tough to kind of like mentally just get back into it after that. I kind of went to the side and put on my headphones and started listening to some music and helped trying to get me back into the game. Kind of one thing I do a lot when I'm in regionals is I'll walk around and talk to people I haven't seen in a while. And well, every time you see somebody, they're going to ask you what your record is. And I didn't want to tell people I was 2-2 losing to Night March with Toadbats, because that just stings. Like that's not fun. But I'm still mathematically in it, so I keep playing it out. So I played against another Night March in the next round, and she was a solid player, but I think she was pretty new, and I beat her. And then I played up against a bad matchup. It wasn't. I don't think he ran Vileplume, but it was like a Lurantis Genesect Virizion deck. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can beat this. All his attackers are grass. Don't really need a whole lot to get going against Toad. But let's play it out. And so I beat him. I eventually, game 1 he won. Game 2 I docked him. No, I think I 2-0'd him, because game 1 I docked him. He just started Fomantis and passed. With any attached energy to Fomantis. So all I needed was like, okay, all I need is to get Lugia out in the active slot, and I got there, and then I got the DC for the knockout turn 1. So that was really good. And then game 2,
it's like karma for losing to Night March. It made
I was thinking that, yeah, it's and he was saying, yeah, he beat an auto loss earlier. I think he beat like a Volcanion deck earlier that day. So I guess it was, and then game 2 was much closer. I never put down a Toad the whole game, and I used Lugia to attack with the whole game, and I scooped it up a couple times to keep it alive. So that was pretty intense, and he ran. He didn't run enough to keep it going, so I was able to like pile enough damage on his Genesect and his other stuff he didn't really start off that well, so it was touch and go, but definitely beat him pretty dominantly, which was surprising, considering my main attacker in most matchups is Grass Week. So at that point I was 4-2, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good about stuff. And then I get paired up against Alex Schmansky, he's a really good player. I lost to him in top 8 in Orlando earlier this year when I was playing Mega Mewtwo and he was playing Jolteon, Glaceon, Regice, Garbodor, I think, that kind of deck. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be a good matchup.
That was Vileplume, that's what it was.
Yeah, Vileplume Toolbox, thank you, sir. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess he's probably not playing that today. I wonder what he's playing. And he flips over a Rowlet to start with, and I'm like, what the? Is he playing the Vileplume variant, or is it more of a Toad variant? And I went with the Vileplume variant, thinking I went first, and so I kind of discarded all my energy removal cards. Like I discarded my Fire Ground and my Zero Sick. And when he started, he showed me like he was playing Toad. And that put me on the back foot. I wasn't able to win game 1 after that. It was the matchup for Toadbats versus Toad Decidueye is really weird. And his deck was weird too. I felt like I wasn't unwinnable. He ran Blend Energy instead of regular Grass Energy. so that he could attack with. He ran a Wobbuffet, I guess, to evolve into Decidueye under Archeops lock, um, which I guess was it's not bad, but it also allows you to use like if you run the Blend Energy, you can clean up with Wobbuffet's attack against different things after you put damage out with Decidueye. So that made sense. But allowing like if you ran the blind, I can kind of get hammers and use my disruption cards there. And I felt like I'm from Toadbats, like I have more room for lasers and more room for disruptions. So if I can get a point where he's not able to quaking punch, I can definitely run the tables against him. But I played it out and it's not as good as I thought it was. Maybe if I like was able to draw into scoop ups and really disrupt him from attaching energy and attacking with quaking punch, I could have won it. But he Decidueye is a lot stronger than Toadbats when it comes to the mirror match. Decidueye can pick off my pre-evolutions, like it can pick off Zubats and Golbats really easily, and it's really tough to get that going against that kind of a deck.
I feel like in the mid and late game it's really hard too because if you are able to scoop up an evolution line, you almost can't play it back down.
Right. Yeah, there's that threat of okay, well, you can put that Zubat down, but I have two Decidueye out. It's gonna die. Like so, there was one point where I had like he had 4 prizes left to take, and I had 2 Zubats in my hand, and I'm like, well, he only has 2 Decidueye out. He can't knock out both of them. So I went ahead and put down the 2 Zubats, and yeah, that worked out okay. But I lost game one. I lost game one. I think I won game two. I just went with Lugia instead of Toad in game two, trying to just overwhelm him, outspeed him with that, and it worked out somehow. Decidueye has so much HP; it's just a beast. But I don't know. I was able to get enough energy and just use Lugia's second attack a lot. Deep Hurricane and kind of just overrun him there. He ran a Dedenne too, so that was pretty scary when he's got that Dedenne down. And I'm thankfully run the Fighting Fury belt and had it on Lugia, otherwise I was going to be dead. I was toast. It hits for, geez, he had Fury belt on Dedenne, so it hits for the 180 to knock it out when you have 4 energy on there with
So
it.
he played Wobbuffet and Dedenne. I like
Yeah.
this. It's cute.
I think he made top 8.
Yeah, no,
So
he
for sure.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the Toad Decidueye that made top 8.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and it was a solid deck. He played it a lot differently than most Toad Decidueye players, and I think he played it the correct way. He didn't try to go for scoop ups really heavily. I think he ran AZ and Floatstone, of course, but he definitely focused more on just getting the stuff out and like having kind of a consistent attacker mindset. But game 3, I couldn't get anything going, and he got Quaking Punch and Decidueyes out. I think he had 3 or 4 Decidueyes out, and there was just no way. Like I don't know. I think I had Lugia prized, and it wasn't gonna. There was no way I could win that game. So I ended up just being like, all right, you got it, man. It's tough to lose to him. He's a great opponent and a great player, but you always just want to beat that guy you lost to last time. So that was that. I think just because I knew my opponent from my first round, his resistance was so bad, I didn't really want to play it out much after that. I could have potentially got. I mean, I could have got a top 128 for sure if I went out, but I'm not in a position to qualify for Worlds this year. And top 128 doesn't really get anything but the points for that. So I'm like, oh, well, let's just call it a day. And I hung out with my brother. He's in St. Louis for a little bit. So I just hung out with him. And, like, we went to, just enjoy not playing Pokemon for a little bit.
Yeah. I would actually say my favorite part of the weekend was not playing Pokemon.
Yeah.
I did something similar. Like, I like, okay, so I pre-ordered the Switch, and I forgot that regionals was the same weekend, and then I panicked. I was like, oh man, like now I'm not gonna be able to play Zelda. So I ended up like just staying up and going to the midnight release to get my Switch, and then caught my flight early that day, the next day, and brought it to St. Louis. So after I took my fourth loss, I was just like, all right, I'm dropping. I'm going back to the hotel. I'm just playing Zelda. Best
Yeah.
part of the whole weekend.
And I say, like, to newer players that are interested in playing regionals, don't drop. Don't be like me and Eric. It's okay to drop if, like, I don't know. I've been playing for six years now, and I know Eric's been playing for at least 3 or 4. Um, and it's really good to if it's your first regionals, play the whole thing out. It doesn't matter how good or bad you're doing, because you're going to play some of the best competition you're going to play against anywhere. So it's really helpful to learn the nuances and the higher level. Like you'll learn, like your opponent will actually sit there and like look at their deck and see what counts are out of their deck and their prizes, and you'll learn a lot about how to play a longer tournament. So, but if you're playing like me or Eric, where we're going to 5 or 6 regionals in a year, there's no real shame in dropping if you know that mathematically you're not able to accomplish what you wanted to do that day. So it's just it's important to figure out what are your needs. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I know there's some players like Marcus that
Yeah.
will play no matter what. Like he'll suffer through anything. Like he could be playing the worst deck in the world.
He could be
Um,
like 0 and 4 and still just be like ready to play the next round.
yeah, or even just like not ready, but still will be like, I'm going to play. I'm like, Marcus, you can drop, you know that, right? It's like I'm just gonna keep playing. To his credit, like that's who he is.
That's a
So
good. I wish I had
that's
that
good.
attitude though.
Yeah, for sure, I do too. But non-expanded, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's a lot of decks where you just like item lock decks or like I don't know.
Yeah, I hate expand. Like I've never dropped actually from a regional before. This is my first one because I already don't
Oh,
like what.
I said, oh man, you
Yeah,
really don't like expanded, yeah.
yeah. So I'd rather play Zelda instead of playing against an item lock deck, evolution lock deck, or like some deck that can just knock me out in one hit. That's
Yeah,
expanded. So
that's expanded. There's there's not a lot of creativity. I mean, there is. There we saw a lot of that this past weekend with players bringing out like Volcanion for expanded and like that like with Grafton Roll getting top 32 with
Aerodactyl?
Aerodactyl. Did he get top 8 or no?
No, I did not.
Okay, and then there was some creativity, but there was a lot of the same. Like there was a lot of and I guess there was the Vileplume Decidueye and Vileplume Lurantis decks that did pretty well. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I was pleasantly surprised. I think with the healthiness of expanded, I was thinking it would just be like Trev, you know, Yveltal Archeops and Speed Darkrai, and that would have been it. But people showed up. People really put a lot of time and testing into expanded, or at least pretended like they did.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so it's exciting to see that. I think people really. It was the largest regional ever. With the 704 Masters, I think.
That sounds
Um,
about right.
704 around there, and it's always cool to see like what people come up with. And since Pokemon's put their money where their mouth is and train, okay, we're gonna start paying you lots of money, to make sure that like people show up for these things. People show up and people put in the time and effort. And you know, as I get to a point where my life is getting busy, if you guys don't know, I'm getting married in the end of April. And so it gets to the point where like you really appreciate how much you had in the free time in the past to do stuff. And people are definitely putting their time and effort into it, and it is turning into a competitive, like really competitive scene. I hope it doesn't lose that spirit of the game that brings a lot of people into this game from other games.
For sure.
But it also is encouraging that people are taking it seriously.
Definitely. So,
Hmm.
so I guess, John, are there any like closing thoughts that you have regarding this
Already
event we went
talked too
to?
much.
What's that?
I said I've talked too much, but no, I'm good. Closing thoughts as far as expanded.
Oh yeah, just this regional event in general.
I was happy with how it was run. I'll say that. We got out of there by I think 10:30 for you guys.
Well,
And for
yeah, when
me,
you drop, John, you do get out there pretty early.
no, now I'm saying I came back before the event was over. I came back and I think the event ended at 10:30.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was definitely ran pretty well.
and there wasn't a lot of complaints for as far as like the judging or anything like that. Any experience I had with a judge was very positive. There wasn't any like I could have appealed anything to like there was one thing I could have appealed to a higher judge, but it wasn't significant, so I didn't really feel that like that was necessary. But it was well run event. I think the Cracklers ran it, and they were running good stuff. So props to them for sure. Always bringing in a good crew, and I look forward to playing in the next one.
Hmm. Yeah, I would sympathize with John there. Like you said, the tournament was ran pretty well, better than some of the ones we've went to this year, for sure. I'll give a shout out to Ryan Ferry. He picked up my lunch the other day. That was pretty cool. Very nice of him. And then also too, I had a lot of people come up to me who somehow recognized me from the channel, which is weird because I really don't like show my face usually. We've only had I think one video where people could actually see like what we all looked like,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was cool. People still recognized me, knew who I was, and they came up and said hi. So that was really cool. So thanks to everybody who actually came up and just said hi. That was really nice. But
Yeah.
but yeah, other than that, it's expanded. Expanded sucks. But the event itself was fine, and everyone there was nice. I didn't have any problems over the weekend. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I guess the next regional I plan to be at will be Virginia. I know John. He's tying
We're
the
going on a
knot.
little hiatus. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be tying the knot. That's a good reason to miss
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah. But I'll be at the U.S. International Tournament in Indianapolis coming up, and I'm looking forward to that.
yeah, definitely. I should be there as well. I'm not sure about Marcus yet, but so definitely if you guys are going to that, feel free to say hi whenever we go to that one. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for this one. I think we've talked enough. We could
Hmm.
probably ramble on all night, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, as usual though, feel free to like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out our merch over at rarecandytcg.com. If you can pick up something to help support the channel, it'd mean a lot to us. But with that, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you for the next one.